Hey everyone, I'm back with another video. And away from home, going nil-nil, assessing the Brighton game. Today I'm going to be doing a brief analysis of the Brighton game and discussing what worked, what did it, and what we could improve on moving on after the international break. But before I do that, to come away from home with a clean sheet, another point in our books on the board, and Aaron Ramsdale keeping another clean sheet. It's been a great month for us, but before I review the game, let's go ahead and run that intro back real quick. Hey everyone, so today I'm joined with Lisa, a good friend of mine who's also an Arsenal fan. So we're both suffering together, but you know what? It's not as bad as we make it. We got the point overall. And, although it kind of felt like a loss in that first half, we did try to improve in the second half. It's not the end of the world. We do move upwards and onwards, and at least we see that Arteta's trying to do something in terms of trying to create a style of play and some of our players turning up and showing that they want to be leaders in the squad. I just want to welcome Lisa to my channel. Lisa, I hope you're keeping well. How are you?
I'm good. Very good.
And with the way Brighton started under Graham Potter, Brighton's not a team to underestimate. I think they were really pressing us from minute one. Given the conditions of the game, not only that, I think we can be happy with a point because of our defensive backline. The likes of Tomiyasu, Gabriel, Ben White, and Kieran Tierney. Tomiyasu, it seemed like a welcoming to the Premier League. It really seemed like he was off the ball. He was poor in some areas, but in the second half, he did try to improve in certain circumstances. Tierney as well, when he was given the ball, he kind of got off the ball and was poor off the ball. And it seems like we're relying a lot on our youngsters to carry the team week in and week out. That being Bukayo Saka and Amo Smith Rowe. Um, you know, Ramsdale, I think he had a better second half than the first half. And he's starting to show accountability and starting to show that he wants to be a team leader, but also has something to prove in this Arsenal squad. As our goalkeeper so far, he's done really well and kept clean sheets back to back, except for the North London derby. He wasn't really good on the ball in terms of his kicking. He needs to improve on that. And he did take some accountability for that after the match in his post-match reaction. Lisa, I just want to say, do you have any takeaways of the Brighton game? What did you make of it? What were areas we could have improved on?
I think giving Brighton something to think of. I think that we gave them too much space and too much respect to the point where they can do whatever they wanted. I think that controlled the tempo of the game, nullifying a lot of our midfield. It was just attack after attack after attack. I think that the last 15 minutes of the game, I think that was the first time where we actually felt like we wanted to play. I think that it was in moments, but I think the biggest thing is we weren't really hitting our targets, just like the basic football things that you need to do. I think that there was a lot of space and a lot of gaps in the Brighton defense. But I think how they set up, or how Potter's team set up, it was just kind of to a T, to the point where we didn't have a spark. It was just basically us looking all confused. I think that our defense is something that I haven't really been confident on for a couple of years back. Being an Arsenal fan, I think this is the first time where I look at them like, you know what, I trust the back line and the goalkeeper to do the job. I think that they definitely stood up big for us. I think it's definitely credit, especially for Ramsdale, because they kept us or saved us to the whole game. Because that first half, it was just one of those things. I'm like, they're gonna score. It's a bound to happen. I think that Brighton didn't really help themselves because they weren't really clinical, and all of those chances that they created, nothing was on target. So all of the effort of how they were controlling the game for 80 minutes, they had nothing to show for it. I think that's, if I was a Brighton fan, I would be more disappointed of how the game play out. But with me, look, a point is a point, but there's just still a lot to kind of improve. I think that's the biggest thing in football. You need to control the tempo, especially in the middle end. I know that most of the Arsenal fans are saying like, look, Xhaka's not there. Yes, I think that Xhaka is basically a bit of like a glue to our midfield. We can definitely improve because there's a lot of great midfielders in Europe that we can replace. And I think that was my biggest thing, how the transfer window, I know that a lot of people were really worried because it was like 150. We don't know these players. Ramsdale for 30 mil. It was a lot. So, but now all of the players that we've signed are definitely showing up big for us, especially the back line. But I think not having a midfielder really hurt us because how we really want to operate or how we want to play, if one of them get injured, just like Xhaka, because I think most fans don't realize how much of a role that he plays. Because I remember you saying that Tony didn't have really his best game. I think that when Lokonga was brought in, he was playing Xhaka's role, but I see him as like a party understudy.
Yes.
So when Shaka's there, what he does is he kind of with Partey, he kind of gives the backline protection in more so the defensive aspects. But what he does is he would kind of drop back into the left wing with Turney when Turney bombs up. So Turney doesn't have to worry too much about it because there's someone there to cover him. I think Ateta gave Lokonga the job to do, but I think that it was but one of those things where you can't really have two like midfielders and expect him to kind of operate a different role of a midfielder. And knowing that the role that Xhaka does, it's one of those, it just goes under the rug where you don't kind of see it and how we kind of play as a whole. And I think this is where my frustration comes from, where you know how weak we are when it comes to injury. Because I remember when the Northern Derby came out, we celebrated for
We
a good
had
like
no
5 weeks.
injuries.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, a full injury. Everyone's injured free. Jesus,
I think
let's
we
celebrate.
celebrated that more than the 3 points.
The next day just went in. Everyone was falling like flies. It's to the point where it doesn't really matter that
We're
we're
so
playing once a
unlucky.
week. Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter if we're playing once a week because if Party goes, that is just basically our season written off. So it's one of those things where I think that in the transfer window, I think that we definitely have to go out and get a midfielder because I
Yes.
think that most of people might forget in February, Party's going,
To
Aubameyang going,
AFCON.
Pepe's
Yep.
going, and Nelly's going. That's 4 players and bench players that are going to be going. So I don't know how the dynamic of the team's going to look like because if our main objective is to get in the top 4, which I think that if we are consistent and just look at the game once a week, I think that it's achievable, or just get top 5 and just kind of wait for one of the top 4 to kind of slip up and take the chance as we go. But I think that it's just really killing us that now there's injuries, now that there's one of the teams that kind of come at us or controls the midfield, we just kind of look lost as a whole.
I think another thing I want to say, Lisa, I want to ask you is it kind of really shows the urgency that we need a striker.
Yeah.
Aubameyang is just inconsistent week in and week out, and for some reason, some of the games are just not up to par for Lacazette to play. And for some reason, we're not seeing the likes of Balogun and Martinelli being put on. We're not sure what's the case with Martinelli. We were told he would get more game time. It looks like he'll be playing more in, games like the Wimbledon game that we played previously, just getting cup games. It doesn't look like we're going to see much of the likes of Martinelli or Balogun in the Premier League games, which really shows, in that Brighton game, our forwards were high, but they couldn't hold the ball up. And it clearly shows that we also need a striker who's able to hold the ball up, able to be clinical on the ball, but also really good at decision making. And something, in that game against Brighton, it didn't look like Aubameyang was clinical. And even when he had the ball, there was Brighton midfielders or defenders, 2-versus-1 situations where Aubameyang couldn't really pass it to anyone. When he was going to go pass it to someone, it would be Brighton getting the ball right away, getting their foot on the ball instantly. We were always second to get the ball through.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
My kangaroo's knocked. I do apologize. I think that's definitely something that we need to look at, and I think that's knowing the reports that came out in a couple of days that we're looking more of the attack. I think that's going to definitely take us to another level because if you compare Aubameyang and Lacazette, they're two different strikers. And I think that Lacazette, the way we play, kind of suits our team because he can kind of hold up play. He can bring players in, draw the defenders to kind of open up space. But he doesn't really do the movement to kind of open space up or kind of make the defenders think of something else. It's just kind of one of those things. It's very predictable in the sense that he drops deep. Whereas Aubameyang, you don't know where he's going to be at. You can't really project his movement in any shape or form. But he can't hold up play for the life of him. And it's really, really frustrating.
And that's something we saw last season as well, right?
Yeah. And I think that with Aubameyang, he is guaranteed to give you 20, 22, 23 type of goals. But then it's one of those aspects of how football is evolving. You need to be a completed striker because it's just like another player or another element that you can put to your game. Because as I said, most of the defenders don't know what you're going to do next. Because once you drop deep, it kind of allows or opens the gap bigger where most of our wing backs can kind of cut in.
Yes.
And I think the defenders would overall be confused. But because, as I said, the strikers that we have, they lack one thing that's really important and the other one can't really have the other. It just doesn't kind of make sense. It kind of just doesn't go hand in hand because we need a type of striker that is clinical like Aubameyang and has a movement.
But also has hold-up play like Lacazette.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. Well, I think that I think a lot of, as I said, a lot of reports were coming out that we're going all in for attackers, especially strikers. I think that these are type of situations you don't want to rush. I think that's because as a whole, if Lacazette goes, we're still gonna have Aubameyang, we're still gonna have Martinelli, we're still gonna have what's the other one? What's the other striker? The one that was playing under 20. Yeah, we're going to have these three strikers that are still going to be in the books. I think that we need to have a striker that, when Aubameyang leaves us within like 2 years, that he's going to be the main one, whereas Aubameyang and Balogun are going to be there as the understudy. So it needs to be a completed all-round striker that can do the bare minimum of hold up play, link up the other players and score those type of goals. And I'm not saying like 10, 15. I think that we're going to be really reliant on them. So I think that 20 goals per season for me. And I think the name Calvin Lewis came up in the reports that I saw. I think that for me, he's not the type of striker that I want because, again, it's one of those one dimension. I think that when the transfer window was opened and we were looking for a striker, Calvin Lewis' name came up. But then it's just people were saying because Tony, how he whips the ball in, like it's just kind of destined for Calvin Lewin to just bang goals left, right, and center. So I'm sitting here like we're trying to move away from having one-dimension strikers, knowing how football will change within 2-3 years because it's something that you don't really expect because you need to have a different profile of players. I generally don't think that he's the sort of striker that I want because if you guys are going to look at him, look at the basic of how he holds up the play, how he links everyone up to the game, how he does those basic things. Because yes, he does header the ball. He is really clinical, but then it's like we're going to have somewhat of a Aubameyang type of situation where he's still missing 2 or 3 type of aspects that we need for a striker. And knowing that how Everton might ask for a lot of money for it, are you willing to pay for that, knowing that he still lacks different aspects? Because I think that the situation that we're in, we don't want someone to kind of learn or develop through the process because I think that we have a lot of that in the team as at the moment because I think that we're the youngest team in the Premier League, like age-wise. At the end of the day, people are learning through the process. But I think this is the bit where knowing that we have young players in, you need to kind of add experienced players. And I said experienced players, knowing when the game gets tough, they're definitely going to stand up to kind of spark something in the team. Knowing when the youngsters' head go down or the wrong pass or anything like that, it's like chin up, look, you got another chance, keep it going kind of thing. And I think that's the main thing we definitely lacked in the Brighton game. going back to the Brighton game, is, as I said, everyone just kind of looked lost and confused.
Yes.
No one really
From
stood
minute
up.
one
You know?
itself, we just didn't look
Yeah.
like we had our heads in the game. We didn't look like we had the intensity or the energy to begin with. You're right.
Because even comparing the North London derby and how we played in Brighton, it's just it felt like two different teams. I think the sense of urgency, the sense of willingness to actually go for the tackles, winning your own battle, to kind of give reassurance to the other team, it just lacked basic after basic after basic. And I think one thing most of us didn't notice, I'm not sure if you watched the Liverpool and Man City game.
Yes, I
How
did. That was a great game.
the first half of how Liverpool were just getting attacked. It was ruthless after ruthless, and it was just them making mistakes left, right, and center. And I think Klopp just basically in that change room, I don't know what he said. He brought Jesus
They
into that
dominated the game in the
locker room.
second half.
It just woke them up, and I thought that because you at the end of the day, Arteta's still learning in that process. There is going to be ups and downs. Knowing how our young squad is, it just goes
for
hand
sure.
into
And
hand.
we're relying a lot on our youth in our squad. That's something, Project Youth from last season itself. And this is a game. Brighton isn't necessarily an easy game, but they didn't really have their stronger players. They were missing Basuma. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't underestimate them. They're a team with a lot more senior players, a lot more experienced players, like the likes of Adam Lallana, Duffy. And what was a bit concerning was the fact that Arteta just didn't seem to find that game management in time to change the dynamic of the game. But I think, like you said, from minute one, we just weren't in the game.
Don't mind my birds. Carry on.
Oh, that made me laugh. We just were out of it from minute one onwards, and it just looked like we didn't even know how to turn up.
Gather yourself. Yeah, 110%. Like as I said, I think that a lot of our leaders didn't really show up, and it was just frustrating because knowing Aubameyang, who's probably the oldest one in the group, and he's our captain, it was just kind of when Aubameyang head goes down, I think that he gets frustrated and it's gonna fall down, because I think that for the last 2 seasons, it was just our youngsters carrying us left, right, and center. Last season was Saka.
Yes.
This season is Smith Rowe. But as I said to a lot of Arsenal fans, I think that yes, they got the most number 10 shirt and the number 7. There is a lot of weight, a responsibility that goes to it.
For sure,
but then it's like, 100%. I think that when they play bad, we should criticize them. But I think that at the end of the day, you can't really blame them of how the environment is if your leadership don't really stand up in those moments.
As a team, we played poorly, and I think, it was a poor day in the office overall. And, Brighton were not necessarily weak, but they struggled to finish in the final third. And in that first half itself, Lisa, I really felt like we could have been 3-0 down if they had finished their chances and if they had shots on target. One thing I want to ask you is the link-up play with Sambi Lokonga and Thomas Partey. Now, I just want to say the link-up play with Lokonga and Partey looked like a good partnership in preseason games. But I think in the Premier League itself, we need more games to decide whether that works or not. And I think it's way too early to decide whether that works in the league. It seems like he was premature and raw off the ball in that game itself. But you need to take into consideration it's his first season and he's only 21. He's been doing well in other games, but I just think this wasn't the game for him, and it was a poor day in office for him as well. He just looked really raw off the ball and off the ball, to the fact that Thomas Partey had to step up and cover him as well, and also do a lot more work than he needed to in that midfield. It just felt like Sambi Lokonga was not ready for this game. And, it doesn't mean I'm writing him off. He's a good player, and I think he's a really good signing overall. But something that we need a lot more games in the Prem to assess against different teams. We can't necessarily write off a player just because of one game. And I think we shouldn't really overanalyze this game. Take the 1 point and move on into the international break, but focus on areas we can improve on, especially in our midfield, fixing the leaks that we have, and also working on link-up play between that midfield and the defense, but more importantly, communication and tempo. We had no tempo in that game and no pace. we didn't even try to press Brighton. From minute one, Brighton were pressing us, and we didn't even try to press them back. Our midfield was so disjointed and suffocated that we struggled from minute one.
I think one thing that I'm picking up, I think for most of our players, I feel like for them, the conditions have to be perfect in order for them to perform. And I think that now how the Premier League is, it wasn't how it was like 5-10 years ago. I think the money aspects, the competition, the type of youngsters or superstars in a whole, it kind of it's more competitive more than ever. And it's one of those things where, yes, we're a big club, all that, like how the game before the Brighton game came up, I think that one of those people, like, well, Arsenal were meant to beat Brighton. And I'm like, yes, that is the hope that you want to do. But I think that in the Premier League, nothing's really guaranteed anymore. Because if you watch the Liverpool and Brentford game, everyone was saying Liverpool would win like 4-0 and everything like that. I think that now most of the lower leagues, no disrespect, they don't have that fear anymore. They're like, I don't really care if you're a big, I don't care if you're a big club or anything like that. When I'm on that field, I'm going to put my best foot forward. I don't fear you guys. I just have to do my job. And as I said, with our players, I think that the conditions have to be set for them in order for them to actually generally come out and perform. And as I said, the Premier League is so unexpected. It's either when you touch that pitch and the final or the whistle goes, you meant to put the best effort of your life to kind of win those 3 points, because nothing in football is ever guaranteed in any shape or form. It's just one of those things. If you generally put your heart and soul into it to get those 3 points, then you get a pat in the back. If you play and don't do the bare minimum of the football game wise, you kind of get what you give, if that makes sense. So it's one of those things, like as I think the international break definitely came at the right time, because yes, we were in a momentum, winning games, especially after Northern Derby. I think that Arteta himself has to look what he needs to improve, and it needs to be quick, because after that, games are just coming in left, right, and center. I think that we can't really afford for you to be making those mistakes. And I think the first one, I think that you spoke about Lokonga, how he wasn't ready. I think that I already made up my mind when we signed him. I think that he is 20. He was in Division 2 in Belgium. I think that I don't really put a lot of expectations, a lot of weight on him, because I think as a whole, the expectations just go to another level for playing for Arsenal Football Club, because the whole world just can be looking at you. So that's why I'm saying, look, it's just a one-off. Give me 1 second.
No problem.
So I think that there isn't really an expectation. I think the first 3 games when we didn't win anything, I think that he basically said, look, Arteta's given me my chance. I'm gonna go out there, do the best I can. I think that my expectation for him, it definitely went up a bit. But at the end of the day, he's just a youngster that moved from Division 2, and the Premier League and Division 2 are different worlds and 2 different environments.
Yes.
I think it was quite evident for the Brighton game, because I think one thing, as I said at the start of the video, he is Partey's understudy. I think that him going forward in transition, I think that it's just lovely to see, because he'll ping those balls, long balls, short balls, and he's really confident. But I think when it comes to defensive ability, I think that he definitely lacks that. And I think that throughout the years, when he plays in the Premier League, it's definitely something that he needs to learn. But as I said, it's gonna take a while. Yes, that result was disappointing, because how we played in the Northern Derby and how we played in Brighton are 2 different things. Because it was just a drop off from that performance, and it was
underwhelming.
Different. It was a different team that went out there, because the only difference in that first 11 was Lokonga taking Shaq out of it. And I think one of those things, as I said, that we're a young team, that we are going to have those moments. And I think us having those moments, that's when our leadership need to kind of stand up tall and take the game for what it is. Not really put too much burden on our youngsters, because I think our youngsters are the quality they have. They're good enough to kind of nick a goal or get an assist there. But as I said, if your leadership is not standing up in that time being, I think the youngsters feel like they have to kind of shoulder the
A
burden
lot of
themselves.
pressure to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have to show up for themselves and then show up for the team. And
And
I
I think
think
it's
that,
about time our senior players turn up too,
yeah,
like the likes of
100%,
Thomas Partey,
110%.
the Bamiyangs of the world. We need our senior players to also give the 110% on the pitch,
Mm.
something that we haven't seen consistently in this squad overall.
Yeah, 110%. As I said, I think the only leadership that was for me that I saw in the Brighton game, I think it was definitely Ramsdale. I think that it was definitely
Yes.
Gabriel, and I think that it was definitely Ben White, because they were just communicating with each other. I think that they had to do a double shift for us to get a point in that game. So I think that their communication level and then the leadership just at the back to kind of save the game was just an all-time high that I haven't really seen in a while, because as I said, when the conditions are not set for them, I think they just tend to hide. So it's just one of those things that they need to kind of wake up and wake up fast, because as I said, we have fixtures coming up left, right and center. It's just, look, it was a bad day at the office in Brighton, playing at Brighton. Kind of look, what did I do wrong? How can I improve? Because we're not going to have Shaka for like a good 3 months. He's just going to be missing in the midfield. It's just one of those things. I'm like, look, Arteta, it's bad luck that yes, the injury just came in the time being that we were kind of going in our momentum and kind of steadying our style left, right and center for kind of a push 6th or 5th in the ladder. But it's just one of those things. Injury happens, different situations happen. It's now up to you as a manager to kind of stand up for the players, be the leader, the first hand that kind of speaks to the media and everything like that. And then for the leadership behind him to be like, look, I understand, coach, what can I do to improve? And then kind of pass that on, like, look, I'm going to do my job as a leader. I'm meant to look out for you guys, but don't feel like it's a burden for it. I'll take care of it. You just do what you need to do. That's your job at the time being. But as I said, our youngsters are carrying more load than they don't
Yes.
need to. I think that football is a team sport, is a shared responsibility. But then it's one of those things where if one of our teams is having a shit game, I think that it kind of flows from head to bottom and it's quite evident and seen on the field.
Lisa, I just want to thank you so much for coming on my channel again. It's really nice talking to you as always. And as always, I had great laughs. I'm not going to even bother editing. I think it's really funny. And as always, it's a pleasure having you on. And I just want to say, where can people find you?
So I'm on Twitter. I think it's just my last name and then Lisa1. So follow along. You might see some nice photos now and then.
Yeah, so it's Lorai Lisa Lisa1 to
Yep.
follow her on Twitter, and she also goes on Mo Hater's channel for fan cams for the Arsenal post-match games. I don't know if she wanted me to promote it, but she deserves
No,
a lot
promote
more
me.
support. She also
Yeah.
deserves a lot more support and recognition. She does great tactical analyses of the Arsenal games, and also we cover the Arsenal women's game in our own time. But she deserves a lot more support. Unfortunately, I've been trying to get her to make a YouTube channel, but it's as much as asking Arsenal starting 11 to stay fit. As difficult as that.
There was no need. There was no need for that.
I just want to say to all of you guys, if you haven't already, do make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more tactical breakdowns after the games. And, if you think that I missed anything, let me know in the comments down below. We'll see you next time for the game against Palace, against Patrick Vieira, and hopefully he helps gift us the 3 points. But at home, we should dominate and we should do well and bring back the energy and momentum we had after the North London derby. Take care, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of your day.